a couple of years ago right here in Madison Square Garden where Lomachenko was putting body shot from Hitchins. And that may be a walk-off home run.
The pain from the body lingers. It's not going to go away. This fight's over.
That is it. Richardson Hitchins, the pride of Brooklyn.
Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to the channel. Hope you guys are all doing well. Having a nice Father's Day. Obviously, last night was the fight between George Kambosos and Richardson Hitchins. For those of you that watched that preview video that I made, pretty much, quite similar to how I thought it would go. So obviously, we're going to get into that. As always, please remember to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Almost at 500 subscribers now, so yeah, let's hope we can get there soon. But yeah, as for last night, it really went down as I pretty much expected. I thought, George Kambosos again, quite tough. Got hard. He's a warrior, but just such a limited fighter. I don't really like coming out and saying that. It's I don't really like saying that fighters are quite poor. But George Kambosos, I mean, look, he is just a fighter that, in my opinion, he just had a lucky night against Teofimo Lopez. And I also, I don't really like, believing in luck as well. I think, these fighters work very hard and, a lot goes into, training camps and, things of that nature. It's a big sacrifice. But really, he's just not improved since that victory against Teofimo Lopez. I mean, he's not shown anything in any of his fights since then to show you that, he's anywhere near elite level or, undisputed champion, which, shockingly he was before. Obviously, after that, 2 fights against Devin Haney, 24 rounds against Devin Haney, and, he really didn't even make one adjustment. Not one time did he make an adjustment. Not one time did he change his game plan. He just comes in, at mid-range, doesn't move his head and just gets jabbed. And, he's just again, so limited looking for, big power shots. And, that's not going to work. And that's not going to work against, these good fighters and these, guys that have got experience and skill. I think Richardson Hitchins, although George Kambosos is a very poor fighter, I do think Richardson Hitchins has got a lot of skill. When I look at him, I do see a good fighter there. Obviously, called out Devin Haney after the fight. And I think that's the fight that I want to see. Richardson Hitchins has got a lot of skill himself. Talks a lot. I think the build-up would be very good. And I think Richardson Hitchins, I think he is, like I said, I think he's a good fighter. And I do want to see Devin Haney again against someone his age, his size as well. With a lot of these Devin Haney fights, especially recently, Lomachenko small and, 35 years of age. Jorge Linares, you're fighting him on the back end. Gamboa, small and fighting him on the back end. Now Ramirez, on the back end. So, I do want to see Devin Haney, against someone of his age, really, and then let's see what Devin Haney can do. Obviously, today, Devin Haney has been on social media for all the wrong reasons. And also, you don't like to see that. He's mentioned, family and stuff like that. So hopefully, Devin Haney, gets his head right. I know stuff like that is never easy. Always, difficult, especially, when there's children involved. So, yeah, hopefully Devin Haney, gets that situation resolved. And yeah, let's see that if we can get some big fights. I think it was very interesting to see after the fight that Richardson Hitchins said that he's now a free agent. I think that is quite interesting. I think Eddie Hearn's already mentioned the fact that he didn't like that comment. And to be honest with you, I actually have to agree with Eddie Hearn. I think Richardson Hitchins was with Mayweather Promotions and his career was really going nowhere. He's come to Matchroom, had some good fights, became a world champion against Liam Paro. I think Eddie Hearn has done a fantastic job with him. Last night was a homecoming in New York. And again, a decent name in George Kambosos. And, really that takes your stock and that takes your name up to another level. So, yeah, I think they'll work that out. I don't see why Richardson Hitchins would leave. To me, that, wouldn't make much sense. But as for, George Kambosos, I do think that now it's probably the right time to call it a day. You're someone that's, made a lot of money in the sport of boxing. You become a world champion. Again, I do question the fact that he ever became a world champion, especially an undisputed champion, relative to his skill and his level. But he's done well for himself. Tough guy, definitely earned his money, but, he's pretty much losing all of these fights now. I mean, even when he beat Maxie Hughes, a lot of people thought that Maxie Hughes won that fight, quite comfortably. And what is Maxie Hughes? He's a fringe world level guy. So, what is George Kambosos going to do? Is he just going to be a gatekeeper for some of these top guys? Does he want to be that? Made a lot of money in the sport. So, he's done a lot for Australian boxing. I think it would be smart to call it a day. Obviously, still quite young, relatively young at 32 years of age. But if I was George Kambosos, I don't think, there's much need to take any more punishment now. And then, like I said, for Richardson Hitchins, I think there's, some good, potential matchups coming up. So, as always, let me know what you guys think. What do you guys think about the fights yesterday? I'm definitely interested to hear your guys' opinion. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you guys on the next one.